Hey, everybody, this is Jay Nathan. Thanks again for listening to the Gain, Grow, Retain podcast. Really excited about this episode with Lisa Pratt, who's the VP of Customer Engagement Marketing at Kronos. And if you're not familiar with Kronos, they are a 40-year-old human capital management platform company who have gone through an amazing transformation from perpetually licensed on-premise technology to the cloud and subscription. And so Lisa helped lead those efforts and that transformation within the business. And we sat down and talked with her. Great conversation. I think there's tons to learn from this. So really excited to share this with you. This is part 1 of 2, and hope you'll learn something. And please subscribe to the podcast.
Welcome to the Gain, Grow, Retain podcast.
Today on the Gain, Grow, Retain podcast, we were lucky to have someone that I've gotten to know over a couple of years here, Lisa Pratt from Kronos. And her title today is VP of Customer Engagement Marketing, which is a really cool title that I want to dig into. But really the other thing we want to talk about is this amazing transformation that Kronos has gone through really over the past, Lisa, 8 years?
I'd say, about that long.
So Kronos was founded in 1979, I believe.
Yeah, like 40 some odd years ago.
So obviously you didn't have cloud technology back then, or really even the subscription purchasing model back then. So set this up for us. Tell us, why did you need to make the transition, and how did this whole thing start? Because it's a really big story.
Yeah, so we have been in business, 42, 43 years. Our roots are as a traditional kind of license-based software business. We are in the human capital management, right? So all the software to help manage your workforce. And we've always been license-based. And what happened was we did some, let me give our executives credit for recognizing that, the space, especially in the small, the SMB market, was moving to the cloud. And that's not where we were. And they recognized that and said, we kind of need to see where that's going and figure out if that's the right place for us. And so we kind of dipped our toe in the water and took our traditional license-based product, and we essentially hosted it and offered it as a SaaS offering, although it was not truly a multi-tenant product.
Right.
And we went to market with that. And in the process of doing that, we learned a couple of things. We learned that, yes, indeed, the market was going towards cloud, and we need to figure out what is our position going to be there. How far in do we want to be? The other thing that we realized is that just because you have a cloud product does not mean you're a cloud company. And so I think the stuff that we'll talk about this morning is all the other non-technology pieces that we needed to attack. So we realized, we need to go all in. And so while we were offering our traditional product in the cloud, we were simultaneously developing a brand new, from scratch, game-changing enterprise cloud-only product that was going to be our future.
Right. So you at one point rewrote the entire platform, which is sort of unheard of, right? I mean, you always hear the stories of Netscape when they tried to rewrite their browser and it sort of tanked Netscape, right? So that's a big risk.
Yep.
So a question for you on all this. So obviously a big shift when you shift from a perpetually licensed model to a subscription model, you sort of hit this cliff of revenue, right? Because you don't get to take all your revenue up front anymore. You actually now have to spread it month by month over the life of the contract. Mm-hmm. So at the same time, or near the same time, I think you guys went from being public to being taken private. So how big of a factor was that in helping you actually achieve what you needed to achieve to make this shift?
That's a really good point. So we went private before all of this happened. I will say, and this is certainly not the topic for this podcast, but we are very fortunate in that our investors believe in us. They believe in our strategic knowledge, in our executives. They trust us. And we kind of, the executive team laid this all out, and our owners were okay, if this is what we need to do, let's make the right investments. So they were completely behind us, and they knew the potential for the tanking of the revenue. Now, I am happy to say that for a variety of reasons, that never happened to us.
No.
Right? I mean, we are the market leader in workforce management. So we had such a huge customer base. We have thousands of customers, $1.5 billion in revenue. So we had enough customers that were still paying maintenance, that were still in the old business, to kind of fill that revenue pothole, if you will, as we were kind of migrating our customers to the cloud. So it kind of evened out. We were really fortunate.
Yeah, very fortunate. I mean, I was with a company, also some similar investors at the time. I was with a company for 9 years that, they're still making this transition to the cloud. And, they are publicly traded. And I think that was always one of the biggest concerns is how do we, accelerate through that pothole? I like how you call that a pothole. I mean, because it's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
How do you accelerate through that? And it seems like you had enough momentum in the market just to be able to not even really worry about that.
We did. We had enough revenue that was not tied to our transition to the cloud that was able to kind of get us over that.
Let's start then down this path of the other things. So you started with the technology, you took the on-premise stuff, you hosted it in the cloud. Seen that happen too. It's a really interesting approach, but you learned a lot from it.
Mm-hmm.
You had like $25 million on that product, right? Is what I read in the document you shared with me. I mean, that's the size of some small companies alone.
Right, yeah.
So, but then it seems like as I read through this document, is this document public? Can we share this?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
in fact, it's on the Kronos website. It is. Yes, please.
Okay, good.
If I had, yes, I need to create some more time to get it out there, but please share it.
Well, we'll help. Yeah. So this document, just for those listening for the first time, is really the story of this whole transformation, beautifully documented and some of the factors. But as I read through it, it was like you guys were peeling back the onion as you started with the technology, but then what did you find, right? There were some other, you started to see all the dominoes behind that needed to fall to really make the shift to a subscription model as opposed to perpetual.
Yes, absolutely. So what happened was when we kind of we said, okay, we're gonna offer our traditional license, in the cloud. We know this is the future of our company. We need to make this attractive for both our salespeople to go out and sell it and to our customers who want to buy it. So I'll never forget that we had our big annual sales kickoff and we rolled out these incentives we kind of put some sweeteners for the quota credit in place for the sales folks, and then we put some offers out there for customers. So like for example, you could have up to 3 free months if you bought in the cloud rather than on-prem. And in addition to salespeople, we get an extra kicker in their quota credit.
Lisa, did you start with new customers only?
We started with new customers, but then there was also an incentive for existing customers to flip to the cloud.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we were offering it for both. And so anyway, as a good salespeople, they're like, oh, I can totally go out and sell this, and it's good for my customers, it's good for me. So instantly somebody goes out, they sell one of these deals, it comes back to us at corporate, and then all of a sudden we realize, oh, wait a second. What did we mean when we said 3 free months? Do we mean that you pay for 12 and you get 15, or you pay for 9 and you get 12? And oh yeah, by the way, we're a product company, so none of our internal systems are even set up to give away anything for free. And so we realized at that point that just because we had a product to go to market with did not mean that the rest of the business was at all set up in order to do this. But the problem became we weren't a SaaS company. We had a SaaS offering. So we didn't know what those things were. We didn't know what we didn't know. And so we ended up bringing some consultants in to help us figure out, okay, if you hear all the different things that you're going to need to change in your business if you truly want to be a SaaS company, because we didn't know what those things were. And so that kind of was the beginning of the path for us. And it was very, and that I was the lead on that project. It was very uncomfortable, I can tell you that. They peeled back the onion on every single one of our functional areas. And these are areas that were high performing for a traditional license-based company.
Yeah, exactly.
We're clearly not going to be cutting it for our move to the cloud. And we had a lot of people's babies got called ugly, and it was really tough to hear. But we thankfully, we decided to really look to the future and kind of embrace those recommendations. And then we spent 3 years implementing them.
Wow. Well, I mean, there's nothing to be ashamed of with that, right? I mean, you would think, because it was built for a different model.
Exactly.
But I think if people think that software is software, and if you just flip to a different delivery mechanism, then it's the same thing. But it's just really not. It's actually a service as opposed to a product now.
Exactly. So the concepts of, we used to get all the money up front. So if it took us a little longer to implement, well, so be it. Customers now are very angry if that happens, right? Because they're paying, right? They're paying annual in advance. And so the dynamics are different. And so I think that part of it was just that, Kronos is an excellent company. It's a great place to work. And so we tend to have a lot of long timers who have, the old model was familiar and comfortable. And wait a second, my team has been high performing, being seen as high performing for years. How is it that you're suddenly telling me that this isn't good enough anymore? So there was, there was a lot of this was one of those cases where I think sometimes our history held us back. I'm really happy to say that we were able to, through really strong leadership in our company who were like, guys, this is our future. So let's celebrate our past, but like, let's look towards the future. Because there was, it was uncomfortable, especially since this is the other thing. We're doing this from a point of strength. We have never not had revenue growth for any quarter in our history. And
Right.
So we're doing this from a standpoint of like, we're doing really, really well, but we know our future looks different, as opposed to we're having problems. This is like a burning platform. So it's even harder to get people on board when things are going well.
Yeah, exactly. Why would we change?
Yeah,
exactly. Well, and the other thing, I just thought of this, but I mean, 2014, 2013, 2015, you were in the middle of a huge economic recovery at that time too. So you had like all this tailwind behind you.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly.
Well, and the economy was doing well. Obviously, those two things go together, but there couldn't have been a better situation to just sit back and enjoy that. Right. But
Right. Our investors were happy, and yes, exactly. Yeah. So I think took some chutzpah to say, you know what, we are going to rock the boat. And when the boat stops rocking this time, like we're going to be like on a cruise ship instead of a tugboat. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as I was reading this document too, I was thinking, wow, there were a couple of burn the boats moments here too, where like, we're going to go to this island, we're going to this new place, and we're staying, right? Like, let's burn the boats behind us. We're not leaving. So, I mean, the fact that you did that in the good times is really impressive. Now, you had to establish a transformation office, something centralized to help drive all this change at some point. This is something that we've been doing with our clients. We call it a customer strategy team, but I love the way that this document puts it, and I'll read it and then I'll let you talk about it. It says, one of the lessons learned here is that you establish a transformation program rather than a series of independent projects that standalone work streams are not as powerful or as impactful as a centralized program that considers and coordinates, all the projects as a cohesive whole against the strategy. So tell me about the TMO, because that seems like was a linchpin for you in driving.
It absolutely was, because in some cases, we hired consultants. They kind of came in and said, here are the 45 different things that you need to change in order to truly be a world-class SaaS company. And they kind of, then put all the 45 different things into 6 work streams, and we kind of attacked them all. But some of the things in there were not necessarily brand new ideas. And there were cases where like, oh yeah, we got 2 people working on that nights and weekends in their garage. And so there were definitely some places where people had been starting down that path or kind of thinking, and we had start with a little bit of like, well, wait a second, wait, that's not a new idea, or that's, but then once we were able to demonstrate how all of the pieces fit together, and the transformation is not about making a couple of incremental changes within one functional area. It's when you put all of those things together that's what's going to get us where we want to go. And so kind of it did a couple of things. First of all, it sent a much bigger message to the entire company, right? This is a big thing. We are putting resources against it. We have branded it.
Yeah.
Our executives are talking about this. Is not a series of small projects. This is a large programmatic initiative. So it really helped with the employee communication piece of it. The other thing, frankly, I was able to get additional resources for some of these kind of side projects, because it was put under the protective umbrella of being part of the transformation office and not being a side project. So it absolutely elevated the visibility of every one of the initiatives. It made people want to work on them. Hey, I was getting emails, or people were stopping me in the halls. Hey, is there anything I can do to get involved? It just absolutely elevated the entire effort. And there were times where I was somebody's like, oh boy, I'd like to make more progress on this. We don't have enough resources. I'm like, wait, I can get you some resources. So I'm getting headcount or money, or whatever. So it really and I think our ability to do that also then sped up our getting to the end game, right?
Yeah, right. So you ran that whole office that
I ran that whole office for 3 years.
Because this document talks about how Kronos appointed a full-time head of the TMO to oversee the program and set the priorities. The company chose a seasoned professional with a proven track record for working cross-functionally. That was you.
That was me. I will say I was not the writer for this. I was very flattered by those words, though.
No, it's awesome. But so the cross-functional piece of this, it's a little bit of a cliche term, but it's critical, right? I mean, I always talk about SaaS companies in particular. They're such a team-based sport, because it's like a football team. You have people who can run the ball. You have people who block on the front line. You have people who can catch the ball and run really, really fast. You got a quarterback. SaaS companies are the same way. You have product engineers, you have product managers, you have marketing, you have sales, you have customer success. I mean, you couldn't imagine a more diverse group of talent in in a lot of organizations. I know a lot of companies have this kind of diversity and skill set, but it seems to be really pronounced in SaaS. And they have to work closer together, I think, than in any other industry almost in the world, because the whole thing depends on each link of the chain working well. So what were you doing prior to this that gave you that credibility as a cross-functional leader to run this thing?
Yeah, so I have kind of an interesting background, which could be a whole other topic. So I actually was hired here. I'm a quantitative person. I was hired here as a statistician, and we had done a pricing study with some consultants, and market research, which was one of the things I owned, was part of that. And they said, "Hey, Lisa, will you please be part of that team?" And I'm like, "Okay, I can do that." And I was part of the core team, and at the end, where the consultants say, "Here's the 10 things you need to do to improve your pricing structure." And at the end of that, our pricing director quit, and they said, "Hey, Lisa, since you were we've got to get this stuff in before our next fiscal year. Since you were on the core team, could you just program manage these pricing initiatives?" And I said, "All right, I don't have a pricing background, but if you need somebody who can manage a portfolio of projects, communicate well, and work cross-functionally, sure, I'll do it." Anyway, so I did that for 6 months until we hired a new pricing director. But anyway, that kind of established me as somebody who could work cross-functionally and manage a complex portfolio of projects. So then I started getting tapped for these other kinds of strategic types of initiatives that required those skills. So again, I give our executives huge kudos for saying, wait a second, these are skills that we value, even though she's in a totally different role and that's not her area of expertise. We want to tap into those skills. Let's yank her from what she's doing and put her on these things that are of more strategic importance. So I ended up kind of falling into it just because they recognized that these skills could be better used elsewhere.
Right. So awesome. Yeah, pricing can impact so many different things, even if you're not changing your whole business model. So the fact that you already had that experience really positions you well. That's amazing. So one of the things that is talked about here, and I know as part of this, is you talk about this culture shift to being more customer centric. So were you not customer centric before? Or was it just that the business model allowed you to be more loose and floppy there?
Yeah, I mean, Kronos has always cared about our customers. You can't have as many customers as we do if you don't care about them. Right. But I think it's different to have people who are customer facing be good with customers versus have it be part of your culture and part of your DNA. And recognize that even though I'm not customer facing, if I were to design that process differently, that would help the customer get more value, or that would help make Kronos easier to do business with for the customer. It's that whole taking everybody inside the organization and getting them to think, is everything I'm doing either trying to add value for a customer or make things easy for a customer, regardless of whether or not I'm customer facing. So I think in the past, our customer facing folks were very good with customers, but the rest of us didn't necessarily always have our customer hats on in everything we do. And that's where the whole culture, and that's where if you can get all your people to really do that, then you're operating totally differently. And that's when you're truly customer first. Yeah.
So give me an example of one, you probably have 100 examples of this, but of one process that went from being more internally focused on Kronos to being more customer centric through this transformation.
Okay, so here I'll give you an example of a big one and an example of a small one. So if listeners want to start big or start small, they can. So in a big one, it was all around time to value, right? So in the past, our approach was, okay, we need to put the software in. You sit down with a customer and you say, tell us what you want. And you kind of start from scratch and you collect their requirements. Well, a couple of problems with that. One is that takes a long time to start over all the time. And we've done this thousands of times. Why can't we streamline? And that makes it easier for customers. Everybody wants to get live faster. But the other piece of that, which is a little more, it's more subtle, but more important in building that SaaS relationship, is if we pre-populate, or if we're taking more of a lead type of approach to the implementation, and if we go in and say instead, hey, we've implemented in hundreds of other, let's pretend it's a grocery store, a customer. We've already implemented in hundreds of other grocery stores. This is what best in class looks like. Let's start there and talk about how this may or may not work for your business, but let's bake some of these best practices in. And it will save us time because we've already pre-configured some of that. And the second thing is we're helping the customer have a better solution because we've already taken all of our past experience and we've pre-populated it in there, and then we can kind of tweak it as to fit their business. But that's going from a order taking, tell us what you want, to a let us lead and consult with you, and you're going to get a better solution faster. So but that requires different skills. That requires more consultative skills. It was definitely a lot of work on our part to go back and kind of pull all that together and kind of come up with the best practices. But so that's kind of, that was big, right? So there's a big example, and we do, we branded, like that is now our methodology, and we brand it, and we talk about it, and we're like, this is how we do it here. So here's a small example. So in our Voice of the Customer program, and I'll just pick on one of the surveys. So we obviously, training is a very important part of our, of helping our customers get live and successful. So we do a survey after all of our training classes. And when I looked at the surveys, I realized it's all about us, right? Was the trainer effective? Were the training materials effective? Was the, I know it was all about kind of like logistics and all that kind of thing. And so I kind of looked at it and I said, but what we don't know is at the end of this, is the customer, can they successfully run payroll?
They get the value.
I would rather have a whatever, not as fancy training materials, but somehow, as long as they can get the payroll run, rather than, the notebook looked nice, but I'm not quite sure what to do at the other end. So anyway, so we're re-looking at all of our surveys to find 10, and now we're asking instead, how was that experience with us going to help you? Like, is that going to help you achieve your outcomes? As opposed to tell us how we did so that we can change up our process. Exactly.
Pat ourselves on the back. No, that's awesome. I actually wrote out the word outcomes focus as you were talking about that. It's not about us anymore. It's about the results that they're able to get. And it seems like a subtle shift, but that's a big shift. Right?
It actually is a big shift in some cases because our internal stakeholders use that to figure out like what processes do we need to they need to know, like, do I need to change up the training notebook or whatever? And also for some of these, there's compensation tied to it. Right. So like our support folks, right. So they are compensated based on the scores that they get on those surveys back from the support experience, the trainers are right. So there is compensation tied to it. So there's definitely, we had to leave some questions in, but just, it was a shift for sure. And rewriting all the questions and then kind of getting buy-in. But I think it's the right thing to do, right? At the end of the day, all that matters in a SaaS world is, does that customer feel like they can be successful?
I want to go back to the thing you were talking about on time to value for a minute. I noticed, at least it's in this story that you shared with me, its outline is really a top level item. Time to value is sort of huge there. And what you described a minute ago on that, it speaks to skill set changes, probably new and different people in there. So again, it comes back to the people aspect of this.
Yep.
Did you retrain your existing team, or did you augment them with outside help? Did you build new processes that they had to follow? Because there's a difference in messaging there that's pretty profound in terms of what they need to accomplish with the client to get them across the finish line and feel good about where they are. So how did you handle that one?
Yeah, I mean, I will say it was definitely a combination. There were, like we got some long timers that are like, oh, no, I'm already familiar with these documents and these processes, and so there was some of that, but there was a lot of training. There was a lot. It was a very thoughtful. Okay, what kind of skills are if we're gonna have our methodology kind of be more consultative, what kind of skills do people need to have? Right. So there was consulting training, and also because Kronos is taking on a bigger part of the burden of getting them up and live, right? We're not like augmenting their IT staff, which is what sometimes happens in an on-prem implementation. We're owning it. So we're like, we really need to up our project management skills. So we implemented a project management bootcamp. And so we went through and said, what are all the skill changes or, new skills or, morphing skills. And we put training and enablement programs in place. But there was also some, we need more people who have these skills to come in, and other people were not as comfortable with the, kind of the new methodology. And that's just kind of part of it.
Yeah. How big was the company? I should have asked you this to begin with. How many employees did you have at the time when this is all happening?
That's a good question. So I'm going to say we had about 4,800 maybe.
Okay. So you're thousands.
Oh yeah. We're fairly large. Yeah. So we were probably we were probably $1 billion when this all started, and we're about 1.4, 1.5 billion now.
Amazing.
So yeah.
Teaching thousands of people how to do and operate differently is just, I mean, it's hard with a couple hundred, much less thousands.
Yeah, and I will say that was by far the hardest part. Partly for me, because as somebody who's built their career, frankly, as a statistician, like this is like this softer stuff is not like where my roots have been. I've really adapted well, but yeah, no. And so when we had originally hired the consultants that helped us kind of think about the transformation office and what that looked like, they had actually said, like, don't underestimate kind of the organizational piece. And
right.
I'm, yeah. And I remember when we were kind of staffing up the TMO, I'm like, okay, I'll lead the whole TMO, and okay, we need somebody to run the metrics practice. I'll do that too, because like I'm a quantitative person. And I remember they cautioned me, they're like, you're going to have to spend so much of your time going out and educating people and talking to people. And, I was like, yeah, no, like talking to people isn't a job. Holy cow, I was so wrong. I was wrong. It was really, yeah, there was but then, I'm just going to digress here for a sec, but I had an epiphany about halfway through this. One of the things that I was doing was a lot of employee communication. And so, people would ask me to come talk to their staff or their all hands meeting or whatever. So I was at presenting to a staff meeting in professional services. And afterwards, the director who had asked me to do this, said, hey, I just really want to thank you. And this was all lovely, but can I give you some candid feedback? And I said, well, of course, I'm always looking for candid feedback. And he said, everything you said, resonated and it was the right stuff and it, helped explain. However, it would have been so much more powerful if it had come out of the mouths of the functional leaders within professional services, or like it had come from our leadership and our managers. It would have been more powerful because we would have known, okay, this is something that matters to my functional area. This isn't just another thing coming down from corporate. And for me, that was a huge aha moment. I went back to my office. I pulled in my communications people and I said, okay, new strategy here. We now need to figure out, we need to put together materials that can be cascaded down through, and push it out to the functional leadership and it can be, cascaded down. We need meetings in a box for managers so they can be having these conversations with their teams. So it changed the whole nature of how we got the message out. And I'm forever grateful to that person for just saying, hey, look, like, I'm just going to keep it real here. This is how you could be more effective. And it also got me out of the business of having to go to a lot of staff meetings. So it freed me up to do some other stuff, but it was the right thing. It was the right thing to do. And I would not have known that. So
the lesson there is, if you're thinking something, share it constructively, because that could be really, really valuable. I mean, that was a turning point, it seems like, in the whole communication strategy around this.
Absolutely was. Absolutely.
Man, that's awesome. You obviously weren't running around. I mean, it sounds like you were doing a little of this in the early days, but you weren't just scattershot going to people's meetings when they asked and doing this. What was the communication plan? Like, did you have a company cadence that you kept around this? And, was it incorporated into all staff meetings? Was it incorporated into, the different layers of the organization in different ways? How did you think about the overall communication plan from a tactical day-to-day perspective?
Yeah. So, I was very fortunate in that the executive sponsor for this happened to be the chief marketing officer. And that happened due to his long tenure and good relationships and whatever. And he really values branding and communication. So I had a full-time communications person on my team just communicating about this. So that's, the first thing. So, but yeah, so it started with, I remember like, as soon as we decided to do this, it just so happened, it was like one of our quarterly ops review meetings. It's kind of like the top 100 people in the company. And our CEO started right there. And he's like, guys, this is what we're going to do. Some of it might be uncomfortable. You may or may not like it, but this is the direction our company is going. So get on board. So like it started there. And then, we had regular, corporate kickoffs, annual fiscal year kickoff meetings. Either myself or the executive sponsor was on all of the agendas, kind of saying, hey guys, this is what we're doing. This is new. This is why this is different. This is why we're doing that. So that was a good starting point as well. We had a blog. We had a video series that various executives talked about what this meant for their area. We were at one of the first things that we did was we were implementing Salesforce, and we went live with Chatter first, despite the fact that the Salesforce people said that's not a good idea. But we went live with Chatter first because we knew we needed to have a platform to be able to have cross-functional communication. So we had regular Chatter posts, and if you want to know what's going on, like we're talking about it all the time. Like if you want to know what's going on, I had a group in Chatter that I'm like, I'm not going to force everybody to be in it. I had thousands of people sign up for it. And so I would post, regularly. Every quarter I had a big master visual project plan, and I posted, I showed everybody exactly where we were in terms of progress. So yeah, we had a really aggressive, and also, it's like at our big annual sales kickoff, we had booths and giveaways, and we branded it, and we were very consistent. It was make the shift, and we had a logo, and we used the branding so everybody knew, right? And we actually would call it. We're like, oh, make the shift.
Yeah. Yeah. So it had a name. You have to name these things. Yeah, that's great. So the majority of people listening to our conversation here will probably say, oh, well, that's great. I mean, Kronos is $1 billion company when they did this. For God's sake, Lisa had a full-time communications person. But a lot of this stuff that you're talking about, you needed to have some dedicated resource because of the scale of this thing. But a lot of what you described can still be done on a smaller scale in my mind.
Like get an iPad out and have your executive just do a 30-second top of mind, like here's why this is important, and then post it out wherever you share. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. We've got Slack for chat. A lot of companies do at this point. You can make a video on your iPhone. It doesn't need to be professional grade.
Right.
Like, look at LinkedIn. I mean, people are posting all kinds of stuff shot right on their iPhones.
Yeah.
And having great success with it. Writing a blog, that's not hard.
No.
Just send out an email too, right? I mean, that just an email update. Everybody's gonna listen to that, and then incorporate it into your company meetings. I think the bigger thing is making sure that there's alignment so that the CEO or the executive sponsor knows what to say and what's being positioned and what the messaging is.
That, and be consistent. You need a steady drip of this stuff, right? And you're right. If it's a smaller company, you just have less places you got to drip. But yeah, no, just be consistent. If you're gonna call it something, always call it the same thing, because then, right. So all you had to do was say, make the shift, and everybody knew, oh, that's right. That's those 6 work streams. You may or may not be able to name all the 6 work streams, but you know what it is. So just be consistent and have that steady drip. And otherwise it's just gonna appear as flavor of the day.
Yeah. Right. I think, Patrick Lencioni, if you know who he is, writes about, you communicate everything and then you communicate it again and then you communicate it again, because people don't get it until 6, 7, 8, 12, 15 times.
They don't. And we definitely had, I don't want anybody to think that Kronos does everything, right? I definitely was in the CMO's office and saying, I don't know what else I can do. We've got chatter, we got videos, we got blogs, I'm on the stage, we're doing this, we're doing that, we got t-shirts, we got posters, we got, whatever. And I still run into people who are like, let's make the shift. I'm like, I don't know what else I can do. And he finally had to say okay, well, there are some people who are just not going to get on board. And we've given them every opportunity, and they're going to find themselves in a career limiting position here at Kronos if they don't want to get on board with where our future is, or if they want to put their head in the sand, that is, somehow going to not be to their advantage. But there's not there is a point at which he was like, there's nothing else you can do.
Well, I guess it's the same with marketing. There's just some people who are never going to listen, right?
Exactly. Sadly, yes. You would think if your CEO was going to say this is what it's going to be, everybody would listen. But, and also we're global. So we got, time zones, and some people are, far from the customers or far from corporate or whatever. So those things didn't help either.
Hey guys, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to the Gain, Grow, Retain podcast. If you liked what you heard, please take a moment and share the podcast with your friends and colleagues and subscribe. We really appreciate it. Talk to you soon.